All righty, why don't we jump into this conversation? My name is Daniel Heimpel. I am the publisher of the Chronicle of Social Change and the president of Fostering Media Connections. Talia, if we could move the slide over. The Chronicle is our flagship news site. It's a nonprofit independent news site that covers child welfare and juvenile justice nationally. We have staff in Detroit, that's where John is. I'm in Los Angeles, New York, Arizona, Wyoming, and Florida. And what we're really trying to do is blend federal trends, national trends with local stories. Thus, the project you're going to hear about more. The Chronicle is one of a number of programs of our mothership, Fostering Media Connections, nonprofit media company. That publishes the Chronicle and a print magazine, Fostering Families Today, that's distributed to foster families across the country, as well as our Youth Voice program, where we train young people how to produce journalism and then pay them for our work. So that's who we are. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to John Kelly. He's our editor-in-chief at the Chronicle, and he has been leading the Who Cares project. This will be the third iteration, and he's done yeoman's work to get us to the place where we are. So I'll leave it to you, John.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. So yeah, we're talking today about the Who Cares project, which is, this is, like you said, in our third year of attempting to get some numbers publicly and consistently behind the issue of foster care capacity. So what I'm going to do today, with the help of Talia, who's going to be running the slides for me, is to take you through a little bit of background in our methodology. I think most people on this call have already got a link to the site and maybe have already played around with it a little bit, but I'll do a quick tour. And then I'll share some of our key findings, sort of top line national stuff that we identified, and kind of analyzing the numbers that we got back. And then I will, me and Daniel will take some questions, anything that you guys have that you want to ask. You can include those questions in the chat room. I would ask that you not use the Q&A function. We're going to take chat for the written questions. Also, Talia will be able to, if you want to do the raise hand function, call on you that way. So let's get into a little bit just quickly about the background of this thing. Talia, you can go to the next slide. Like I said, this is an annual data collection project we've been doing since 2017. And it really focuses in on trying to get to two critical questions in child welfare. First, simply how many children and youth are in foster care today? And that is a question to which we do have some annual data from the federal government through what's called the AFCARS system. That's Adoption and Foster Care Analysis and Reporting System. However, the numbers from AFCARS lag behind by more than a year. So we really make an effort to kind of go to each state and try to get an approximate consistent number every year so that we can gauge more real time how many kids are in the system. And then the second part is where and with whom are those children living. And so we use kind of a two-pronged approach to get as much information as we can about that. Next slide, Talia. The first thing that we do is reach out to states directly, to child welfare agencies, and ask them for responses to specific questions about their foster care capacity that we have. And we use a point in time of March 31st of each year and ask that if they can't meet that exact point in time, that they come as close as possible. Things that we have asked for this year from the states, and this is a list that has grown over the years since we started. I think we started with just non-relative foster homes in our first attempt at this, is we asked them for the total number of licensed foster homes they have, the number of non-relative foster homes, how many relatives have an active ongoing placement of youth in their homes. We just this year began to ask them for the number of congregate care providers, that's group homes and institutions, that states have an arrangement with, and the number of total beds available in those spaces. As we get more information on that over time, we'll start reporting that in the project. And then, like I said, the number of children who are in foster care placements of any kind. The second prong of what we do is we acquire specialty federal data through AFCARS and work with professional researchers to take that and aggregate it into spreadsheets or the data sets that you see on the website today. And like I said, while this data does lag behind present day by more than a year, it does allow us to kind of provide some demographics and some contextual information about both foster parents and foster youths and trends in the type of settings. I would also note, like we obviously cannot guarantee an apples to apples on everything between the way that we collect things and the way that the federal AFCAR system does. But when we did our projection for the first year of this project, we did come within 5 of the AFCAR's number in terms of youth in care.
Can I put a pin on that, John? Yes. So I think there were, that year, 2017, the AFCAR's numbers came out last year, 2018 on 2017. We had reported back in 2017 that there were 443,000 kids in foster care, I believe it was, and the federal number was 442,995. So we came very close, and as you will see, we have projections for 2018, which the federal government does not have, as well as 2019, which you're not going to get from the federal government for a long, long time. So that's all.
Yeah, Talia, let's go to the next slide. So the website, which hopefully you guys have all had a chance to check out a little bit on embargo, it is live now. It is fostercarecapacity.org. What you're seeing here is just simply the first thing you see when you jump into the homepage, a little bit of an intro, and our first sort of heat map of changes on total licensed foster homes. The next slide shows the 6 sort of sets that of data that we feature, on that homepage. We do the total licensed foster homes, non-relative homes, the number of kids in care, and that will combine. You'll be able to see the AFCAR's data from 2008 through 2017, and then our numbers from 2017 through 19. We also have some of the sets from AFCAR's on youth living in congregate care, youth living with relatives, and youth living in an unpaid placement. We'll get to that stuff a little bit later in more depth. On the next slide, this is just an example of one of the state profiles, and this is the thing that we're really excited about and think that can be really helpful to reporters. We've, over the course of the last 2 years, really tried to beef up the individual state profiles that we offer. So what you're seeing here is Louisiana's in numerical form. As you can see, it breaks down, as many years as we have of data for various points. You're looking right here at the foster care capacity. There's also a section on foster youth demographics. There's a section on race and ethnicity of foster parents and of foster youth. And if you don't like to look at a whole bunch of numbers like that, you can click the plus buttons and it'll show you any one of those sets as a line graph like is viewed right here. So with that all said, let me take you through. Dana, you got something else?
Are those embeddable? Like, is there a way to embed that if people wanted to in their stories, or do we not?
I think they're grabbable. I'm not sure that we have an embed function, but that's certainly something that we can consider going forward. So Talia, if we move next, I think to the findings section here, I'm just going to go through some of our stuff, and Daniel, feel free to jump in on anything you think I'm moving too fast by, or if anything you want to add. But here's just a few of the things that jumped out to us. And I would add, we'll move through this on the presentation, but all of this information is available in our executive summary of the data project, which is available on fostercarecapacity.org. So one of the main takeaways is we have seen through the federal data that the number of youth in foster care had climbed basically from about 2011, 2012, all the way through their most recent federal report in 2017. What our numbers have shown through the research we have done with the states is that in 2018, the numbers likely either plateaued or ticked down a bit. And in 2019, we have found that the number of youth in care is likely down about 3% below what the federal data shows in 2017. I think our number right now, and we just adjusted it to correct something in Washington State, is down to 428,006. So that is the number of youth in care based on our projection for 2019. And that is, I say projection, it is that is based on responses that we received from every state this year. Every single state was able to provide us with a youth in care point. Next slide. Okay, and here you can see the kind of flow from between AFCARs, the blue, into our numbers that we've obtained directly from states. Another big finding is that while the number of youth in foster care has potentially begun to decline, it looks like it is, we find that the number of licensed foster homes in the country is beginning to increase. For 2018, based on the state data that we obtained, we project that between 210 and 215,000 total licensed foster homes were in the country. And the range now is between 220 and 225,000. That said, and that is a national perspective figure, it doesn't really tell the story of the fact that there are certainly some states that have seen declines and some that have seen increases. You know, we were able to make a comparison between the number of licensed homes in 45 states between 2018 and 19. 20 of those saw a decline in quantity, and of those, I think 11 states had seen a decline of more than 10%. We go to the next slide. Here is just a visual, which again is on our executive summary as well, of some of the states that saw the biggest increases and the biggest decreases. Congregate care. The AFCARS data shows that between 2011 and 2017, the number of youth living in either group homes or institutions declined by about 12% nationwide. But again, that doesn't tell the story on the ground precisely because 20 states have seen the number of youth in congregate care rise during that same period. And out of that 10 of those 20 states, there were 10 that saw an increase of 20% or more. And if you jump to the next slide, Talia, you can see that of those 10 states, it's in some of them, it's quite a bit more than 20%. One point on this to flag for you is that these trends in congregate care are occurring against the backdrop of a new federal overhaul of child welfare financing called the Family First Act, which took effect mostly in October of this year. One of the big provisions in the Family First Act is that states will only be able to draw down federal funds for placing kids into group homes and institutions for about 2 weeks. There are some notable exceptions to that limit, but it will put states in a position more often to decide whether or not to absorb the full cost of placing kids in congregate care or finding other alternatives, such as recruiting more foster homes, therapeutic foster homes, or relying more on kinship. And I'll leave it at that for now, but I'm happy to talk a little bit more about that and Family First and the questions if you want. Next slide. I think I see a question that will the slides be available? I think we can do that. We're happy to send out the presentation at the end. But like I said, you know, all of this stuff, all of this information, and a lot of these images are also on the website at fostercarecapacity.org. The rising role of relatives. 40 states have seen an uptick in the number of kids in foster care who are living with relatives between that 2011 and 17 marker. And of those states, a lot of them saw a very large increase in the number of kids living with relatives. We also, for this project, were able to aggregate the number of kids living with either a relative or a non-relative in foster care where $0 in foster care payment was recorded. Daniel, do you have a question about that before?
I mean, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, John, when you look at, you know, living in a foster home, so that's a foster home, whatever, any type of home, has gone up without a payment, those are likely relatives, correct? I mean, if you right?
Yeah, that's a good question. The reason that we combined them this year, thank you for bringing that up so I can talk about it. The majority are going to be youth who are living with relatives. Why we included the total of youth living with a non-relative where $0 was recorded is because it's likely that those are fictive kin, neighbors, friends of the family who agreed to take a child in. And again, these are scenarios where $0 of foster care payment is recorded. That does not necessarily mean that there wasn't some other form of benefit or financial assistance offered to somebody that took a child in. It's just a foster care payment.
Right. I mean, so relatives a lot of time will be, depending on the state, they will use other funding sources to give them something. But typically, the something that they give relatives is less than the something that they give non-relative foster parents who are licensed to the system.
Exactly. And this is certainly something that the Chronicle has a great interest in exploring a little bit more in depth in the next year or so of covering, is exactly what each state's policy is on working with unlicensed relatives, diversion relatives, and all the things that come in between. But anyway, just to put a pin on this one, between those period of time, between 2011 and 17, the number of kids living in these unpaid placements per the AFCAR's data is up 32%. So there are now 108,426 of the 400,000 plus youth in foster care who are living in a placement where there is no recorded foster care payment to support it.
Big finding.
Yeah. And I mean, look, especially for any Florida reporter on this call, and I've talked to a few already, we are very interested in what the unpaid placement figure means, and it's something that we'll be, like I said, covering quite a bit. You'll see in Florida that the number has gone up to 85% according to the federal data. I was hoping to get a response from Florida DCF before this call, explaining what their perception of that was. Is it accurate? Is that maybe too high? It certainly jumps out. It's twice as much as any other state. I'm happy if any Florida reporters are on this call or anybody's interested, once I know anything from them, if there's another explanation for that number, I'm certainly happy to share that. So moving to the next slide.
John, Matt has a question about as these placements increase and with a move to licensing and paying relatives, what will the fiscal implications be for states?
The fiscal implications of moving towards paying more relatives is certainly a significant piece of the puzzle as we figure out the next phase, honestly, of child welfare financing. We can talk a little bit more. Well, we can talk about it right here, and then we can move on to the last couple findings. But look, the reality is that the Family First Act envisions, we talked a little bit about the congregate care limitations that it puts on. It also opens up some new funding to work with families who are in crisis, where a child is at imminent risk of entering foster care, to try and stave that off, to intervene in the family's life and work with them in a way that would avoid the use of foster care in their case. And the law certainly envisions and tries to put some supports around the idea that in a lot of those situations, a relative will need to step in and take a kid, whether it's for a week or for 3 months or for 5 months. And that is not going to be, per the federal view of things, a foster care placement. That's going to be more informal than that. That plays off to the side, honestly, of any discussion about licensing more relatives as formal foster parents, which I do think there is a move towards in some states, right, Daniel? I mean, I think California is an example of a state where they have decided we really need to be licensing everybody that's taking care of a kid for us.
Yeah, in California, all resource families now, as they're dubbed, are licensed. But I think importantly, as you're pointing out, so there is this general move to rely on relatives more. This is kind of the subtext of why the foster care system is in any kind of functional state, is because you have relatives stepping in. We're seeing that they're not getting paid to the same degree as non-relative caregivers. And most kind of important, I think, to follow as we watch this Family First Act roll out, one of the key things is what you were talking about, this sort of legislated assumption that relatives will step in and care for kids without any support from the government. And I think that that's a big question that everybody in every state should be asking, is why do we have a system that prefers people with no relation to the children over a system, that prefers and pays relatives commiserately to what a non-relative would get paid. And this plays out in different ways. In Minnesota, you're doing a story, we've seen it in Washington State, all over the place. So I think it's a big thing to be looking at. Anyway, I'll let you go.
I would just at this point, because I think that for reporters that are interested in really getting into the depths of how murky it is between fully supported relatives and relatives that are relied on less formally, I would commend to anybody that they find a recent legal review article by Josh Gupta-Kagan, which I think if you just Google the term hidden foster care and Gupta-Kagan, you'd probably find, which really takes a look at the sort of informal, not called foster care movement of kids to relatives, which creates a lot of gray area, because what we're talking about here and what federal data, allegedly and purportedly is supposed to collect is only information about the youth who are formally removed into foster care. So I think you would enjoy taking a look at
I'm just bringing it up now.
so just moving through quickly the last findings, then we'll get to questions here. The numbers from 2011 to 17 in AFCARs reflect that the system writ large in the country is getting younger and it's getting whiter. In 2011, almost 40% of the youth in foster care were teenagers. They were 13 or over. That was down to 31% in 2017, and that's a pretty marked increase. 32 states saw the number of teens in care decline, so the system is getting younger. In that same time frame, the percentage of foster youth who were identified as white went up by 21%. So white youth made up 67% of foster youth in 2017, and that is up from 60% in 2011. Talia, on the next slide here, is important to point out, like we did with some of the other kind of national trend stuff, that's not always the case, or that does not tell the entire story, because there are a number of states where AFCAR's data reflects quite significant increases in the number of Native American youth and African American youth who have been placed into foster care. And on the next slide here, we display some of the states on both counts where there are market increases here. And just to reiterate one more time, we will send out this presentation to people who attend, but you can also get it right now with all these images on fostercarecapacity.org. All you got to do is go to the executive summary. So I think that's all the findings we wanted to hit. I think we also included a little reading room here for you. That's got a link to the executive summary, a couple of our stories from last year on the Who Cares project. We'll be adding more op-eds and coverage of foster care capacity to the website as we go here. We also got a little kind of Cliff Notes guide to the Family First Act, which we've mentioned a couple times. So click on all these links to get access to some of our great coverage here. With that, let's move to questions. I have my email address here, so if there's something that we don't get to, or something really specific about your state that you want to ask, feel free to hit me up at jkelly@chronicleofsocialchange.org. So I think best way to do this, Talia's got her hand on the buzzer to call on some people who have their hands raised, if there are any. And then Daniel, why don't you, I think you're already in the chat room there, so why don't you, we can kind of go back and forth. Talia, why don't you start if there's an audio question, and then we'll go to Daniel for chat questions. Does that work? Okay, so I don't hear anything from Talia, which makes me think that perhaps we don't have any audio questions yet.
Yeah, no hands are raised yet here in the attendee list.
Okay.
So if anyone needs to ask a question, just go ahead and raise your hand. We'll be able to call on you through the chat room here.
All righty.
John, I mean, one thing we probably could go into a little bit more detail about is kind of the increase in congregate care. What are the states that kind of saw that the most, and were you able to find any attributable reason? And overall, I mean, I think the big thing for the group to think about is that there's this big federal push to reduce the reliance on these group homes, but you've seen across the country that the utilization has gone up. So I think that's an area where we should probably kind of highlight a little bit more about what are the states that really stick out.
Yeah, Talia, if you want to back up towards that congregate care image, we can go through a little bit. I mean, I would say that, as far as reporting on the causes for increases in some of these, but that is not something that we've gotten to yet. And I certainly would encourage reporters on this call to get into it with their states. If you go to the next one forwards, Talia, that would probably be the best one. One that really jumps out to me just off the top here is New Hampshire, which has really seen significant increases in the number of kids coming into their care. So it's not surprising that they have seen a proportional increase in their reliance on congregate care. But this is, I think, the most important point to make here is that if this is probably the worst time that you could be facing an over-reliance or an increased reliance on congregate care. You have Family First coming online, and states will be able to delay the impact of these congregate care limits until 2021 if they choose. I think a lot of the states on this slide will, although Kansas is complying and implementing the act in 2019. But that means they have 2 years to figure out, if they want to continue to use congregate care at the same proportion they are and absorb a lot more of that money into state spending, or see if there are other ways and other options that they can beef up to avoid using congregate care. Because Family First was really an expression of congressional will on two things. They wanted to support efforts to avoid foster care, and they wanted to limit the number of kids who were coming into congregate care. They can't make a state do that, but they can certainly say, we're not going to pay for it as much anymore, which is what they did. We got a question here on the chat from Mary Jo Pitzel in Arizona. Hi, Mary. Is there data on where kids go when they leave the foster system, either by aging out, by dropping out, getting adopted, or reunified? That is a great question. To my knowledge, there is no federally collected information on that. I believe there is a survey, which name is eluding me right now. And Mary, I'll look that up and get it over to you. Probably the best information or the best research that's been done on that has been done by Mark Courtney, both in the Midwest evaluation, which I think rolled out beginning in 2011. And then also he's done a lot of work around what the impact has been of California's extended foster care option in California. So.
And Mary Jo, I mean, just anybody, if you want to raise your hand also, it's kind of nice to hear from human beings. So if you want like follow-up questions or something, just raise your hand so Talia can get that in, because hearing human voices can be nice. Shakita Ogletree, are you looking at different types of congregate care placement for use, specifically treatment care? So she's asking, have we gone granular in the overall congregate care picture? And the answer is?
Shakita, if you would like me to provide you with some more granular information, the best that I can do is to get it to you in two sets. The way that AFCARS breaks it down is in group homes and institutions. Now, sometimes we get questions when we do presentations on this stuff. Daniel, I think, got one a couple months ago. What about shelters? Shelters, the instruction in collecting federal data is to count shelters by their closest likeness to either group homes or institutions. So there is no separate count for that. Shakita's asking about specifically treatment care or PRTS. PRTS are a very stringent class of clinical residential behavior programs. That information is certainly not available through the federal data that we have obtained. I can tell you for sure that one of the big questions around congregate care and Family First is going to be around this idea of specialty treatments. I mentioned that there were several notable exceptions to those limits that we talked about. One of those is called a qualified residential treatment program. That is supposed to be a clinical model of residential care that's defined by a few kind of particular details, including nursing staff and trauma-informed model and aftercare planning and stuff like that. The federal government has made it clear that that particular model will not be considered a Medicaid fundable option. And so there's a lot of angst, frankly, about how states will go about paying for residential services in that option, which is supposed to be one of the bigger exceptions to the rule to make sure that kids who really did need to be in residential for a longer period of time were able to with federal support. And if you just go to, I believe on the homepage of chronicleofsocialchange.org right now, we have an article that really tries to break all of this down. Just on the bottom right, if you go to Youth Services Insider, it's the first story.
Talia or Christy, maybe you guys can share that on the chat. We have a Sarah Wilson nationally, and let me just say one thing. Sabrina Smith is asking, are there who lost, it sounds like her children to the system in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. She's asking, are there any organizations that can help protest? I will note that, since we've moved operations into New York City, we've noted that there is a very strong legal there's very strong legal representation for parents of kids who have been taken into the foster care system. We've written about this extensively. In December, the federal government changed a key rule allowing for new money, hundreds of millions of dollars potentially across the country, to be spent on representation for parents and children in juvenile dependency or family courts, whatever you call them. I think that that's a huge story to go after. So Sabrina, look to some of those, the Center for Family Representation, some of those groups that are really doing parent protection stuff. As for Sarah Wilson's question, nationally, the number of licensed homes has increased, but in some states, including Washington, D.C., where I cover, have seen a sharp decline in licensed homes. Is there any research or ideas what the cause for this decrease? What are the implications for youth and care? Well, I mean, nationally, you've seen these declines in licensed homes. I mean, I wonder to the degree that you're seeing more reliance on non-relative, relative placements that might not come under the license bracket. I mean, you've seen this across the country. I think that that's got to be part of it. I don't know the data in Washington, D.C. in particular detail. John will know that better. But I think nationally speaking, you've seen an increased proportion of children placed with relatives because that's sort of the clear moral move. But you haven't seen the same kind of funding for those relatives, which doesn't necessarily lead to the best outcomes. So that's something to watch for. But in DC, do you have any more kind of clear data on that or information regarding DC?
I don't have any specific information on DC, but honestly, like one of our main goals for this project is to supply reporters locally with the ability to get these numbers and ask states what's going on. I would just posit that there are a couple of reasons why a state might see a sharp decrease, or any decrease, honestly, or increase in the number of licensed homes that they have. I mean, one is certainly what Daniel was talking about, with just a move away from them and a reliance more on relatives can prompt that, I guess. Lack of recruitment, failure to recruit new homes is one. Another one is a failure to retain the homes you have by not keeping them happy. And we will have I really think a really cool op-ed from a foster parent advocate in California coming soon on the site about the top 10 ways to lose a foster parent. And I think the more administrative one that will happen, and you'll see in data, is that it's possible that states go in and do, some sort of review of what their available roster is and clean it up sometimes. And you might see a marked decrease just because they're going in and saying, okay, have we not used these foster parents in 3 years? Do they really need to be on this list or not?
We have an earlier question that I think we might have skipped over from Matt. It was, I think I missed the date range for the 2019 data. What is the range, and are they projections at this point?
Matt, I'm hoping I'm answering this right. When we do our questions to the states, and that is our information that we draw directly from them, is the only thing from 2019 or 18 that you'll see on here, because as we've mentioned, federal data lags behind to like fiscal 2017. But on those questions, we ask them not for a range date, we ask for a point in time count. So we're asking them for all those things: total licensed homes, non-relative, their active relative placements. We're asking for them to tell us what those numbers were on March 31st of the year.
Yeah, I mean, the headline though is that, overall, it seems like this foster care surge that marked the past decade is over, and that we're starting to go into a period of decline, which portends well when you're moving towards a huge federal change that is all about reducing entries into the system. I mean, the Family First Act will likely create pain in terms of capacity on the back end. But what you're seeing is that you're seeing the numbers of kids in the system declining, which, can't really be a bad thing.
Yeah, that's certainly true, and I think that it's probably a good thing that the momentum going into a change like this is that the numbers kind of writ large are trending downwards in terms of the number of kids. But like Daniel was kind of getting to, like, the long-term goal of the two provisions of Family First Act are to lower the number of kids that are in foster care at all. But in that short-term ambition of limiting congregate care, that we really feel like that is going to lead some states to need more foster homes, especially ones that serve older youth who are disproportionately the kids who end up in group homes and in institutions.
John, one thing, can you maybe go back to those slides about the increased rates of, here you go, Native American and Black youth in the system? Can you kind of walk us through that in more detail? I think it's kind of important to note, we talked about the composition. The composition of the system is whiter than it has been.
Yeah.
But you're seeing certain areas where, the Native American population blowing up and the Black population blowing up. So you have kind of figured out what's going on behind that. Any reporting that we've done that you think you can point to that kind of describes that?
Well, I'm definitely, I can flag two, but actually they're really both pegged to one of these states. So we're working on some more coverage of child welfare in Minnesota. Now, as Daniel has already reported on, and I will be reporting on some more, Minnesota has, legislators have introduced a law called I think they've changed it a little bit, but it's basically called the African American Family Preservation Act. And the law is a reaction to what you're seeing here, which is a dramatic increase in the number of African American youth who have entered the system. Also in Minnesota, we will be soon working on a project to try and get at exactly what the impact of the Indian Child Welfare Act, which is meant to also help keep Native American families together, has on the courts there. They have, I think it's probably what's most alarming, honestly, about that increase in Minnesota is that the National Indian Child Welfare Act Law Center is based there. They have perhaps one of the strongest protections of Native American rights in the child welfare system of any state. And yet you still see this kind of dramatic increase over the last couple of years in the number of Native kids who are entering care. Past that, I think that this is a key question for reporters in these states to go and ask different states about. Not going to correlate it, but there are certainly a number of states who are on this list who are the subject of litigation right now: Indiana and Arizona. Minnesota, I think, has an ongoing case. Georgia got out of one. And New Hampshire is just, you'll see New Hampshire on a lot of these lists as having some of the largest increases on lots of points of concern. Alrighty, we'll do last call here. Tell you to see any hands up. Okay. Well, from my end, I want to thank you guys for coming and checking out all this information. Like I said, we're going to continue to populate the Who Cares website with additional opinion pieces and reporting and analysis on all this information. And you can reach me with any questions specifically about your state or anything that we've talked about at jkelly@chronicleofsocialchange.org. Daniel.
And well, we have just Sabrina popping in, asking, what about transparency in these cases? So child welfare cases, which is, something that I love. and having these cases private is hurting families. I would agree completely. The fact of the matter is about half the states in the country have presumptively open juvenile dependency or family courts. That means you as reporters can walk in and witness what happens in those courts, and I tell you that's the best fodder for stories. In California, they're presumptively closed, but statute and legislative intent is very clear that you should have that you have a public, the public has an interest in these courts, and you should be able to attend. So we've had to kind of, push our way in there. But I think that access to these courts, access to these hearings is critically important for transparency in this field. Child welfare and child protection is notoriously obfuscated, and I think that that's been a reason why people get it wrong when they report about it, and why child welfare leaders, when something bad happens, get fired so quickly. It's because they are not capable, not willing to talk openly about what's going on. And Sabrina, I see that they're not allowing it in PA. I'm assuming they're not allowing folks into the courts. I don't know what the laws on the books there are, but it's a worthy fight that we've been taking to different courthouses across America. And if anybody wants information on that, you can always reach out to me too. I'm at, you could just do dheimple@chronicleofsocialchange.org, and I'm happy to help too on any kind of freedom of the press accessing juvenile courts. That's like a
pet project.
Pet project passion of mine. So, Mary Jo, can you attend juvie court? You can attend juvie court, but there are limits on what can be reported out of it. We've been trying to find a bright line on the rules that's very murky. Plus can't get records due to privacy concerns. Yeah, there's different rules on getting the actual court records, but you should be able to get them redacted. And in terms of reporting out on what you see, I mean, there's a pretty strong First Amendment argument that they cannot limit what you say about what goes on in those courts if they're granting you access, but they always want to. I think that for us, we have a code of ethics on this, and we are very clear about not, we don't share the names of minors unless they have been, unless they are unfortunately have deceased, then we can use the name of the minor, but otherwise we really don't, just because we don't want them on blast for the rest of their lives in this internet age. But I'm glad you're going in there, Mary Jo. That sounds great. I'd love to see your reporting out of there, and I know you've done a lot of great work recently, so we're very happy to have you on the call and talking about what's going on in Arizona.
All right, guys. Well, again, Jay Kelly at chronicleofsocialchange.org if you need any information or have any questions about our data project. And thank you guys all for coming out today.
Thank you.